Israel and Hamas.
The Hamas army of terror in the Gaza Strip violated the terms of the agreed framework and launched rocket fire at Israeli communities.
Plus, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Zelensky says winter's expected to complicate fighting after a summer counter-offensive had failed to produce desired results due to enduring shortages of weapons and ground forces.
Good evening, I'm Steve Karish in Washington. Despite has resumed. In the hour before the truce was set to end at 7 a.m. local time, Israel said it had intercepted a rocket fired from Gaza. There was no immediate comment from Hamas or claim of responsibility for the launch. Eylon Levy is a spokesperson for the Israeli government.
This morning, after a 7-day hostage release pause, having failed to provide a list of more hostages for release, intensified with sirens blaring across southern Israel all morning, Kibbutzim ethnically cleansed by Hamas during its campaign of systematic extermination on October 7th.
Hamas has said that Israel bears responsibility for the ceasefire ending because Israel rejected offers to continue the release of hostages. Speaking in Dubai, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Hamas is responsible for the end of the truce because they committed a terrorist attack at a bus. Blinken also said that Hamas began firing rockets before the pause had ended and reneged on commitments it made in terms of releasing certain. He's saying their country had no choice but to resume the pounding of Gaza. This is Israeli resident Yael Segal.
I'm really worried about real danger. I hope Hamas will be clever enough to keep the hostages safe because Israel usually, send men from this area, but Hamas doesn't let them to do so and then blames Israel and the victims.
Tanya Rubenstein echoes the opinion of many that for Israelis' return to normal life, Hamas must be destroyed.
It's not a pleasant situation, but in some place I'm glad that this started because we're scared to live in our country. It's our country. We have one small Jewish country. We're afraid to go had suicide attacks. I just called my friend and I said, I hope we won't get stabbed. We just came for coffee. We just want to live.
And also anger, as Israeli warplanes resumed the pounding of Gaza and civilians fled for shelter. M. Ali is a Palestinian living in the Gaza Strip.
We know their treachery. They are They have killed women, destroyed homes, and are wreaking corruption on the world. They blew up our water, our electricity. What for? We have nothing anymore. What is this life?
So we know that fighting has resumed. We also know there is once and for all. Others want killing and violence to stop. And we're hopeful that the recent truce would develop into something larger and longer.
To fighting a war against Hamas. People feel like they can't continue to live under the indefinite threat of rocket attacks coming from Gaza on all parts of the country. Right now, there was just a barrage building and moving nearly 200,000 evacuees from the areas surrounding Gaza back into their communities. I think there is a divide in public opinion, and it has to do with the diminishing support for Netanyahu, for Prime Minister Netanyahu. There is a big majority now in the country. Many suspect that there are political considerations because he is concerned about holding together his coalition, and so he's dependent on the support of hardline far-right ministers and parties in the government who didn't even support this temporary ceasefire for the return of hostages. They are pushing him to continue the war until the end, and he needs their support in order to continue governing.
Well, let me ask this. One of the first things you said was that Israelis feel like they can't live with the threat of Hamas anymore. They want Hamas to be obliterated, want Hamas to go away so that they're not at risk anymore. Does this mean there is a growing appetite for some kind of peace with Palestinians? It would be the Palestinian Authority and perhaps Hamas, in terms of a two-state solution or other kind of agreement that gets us beyond all of this violence?
That's the strange kind of disconnect that that you see, especially among Israeli political and military leaders, and also in the general public. There is not a support for the two-state solution, and in fact, there's not really any kind of stated objectives for the day after the war ends. People know that it will be very, very difficult to rebuild Gaza and install some kind of governing authority that instead of Hamas. People know that the Palestinian Authority is not supported by Palestinians in general and is truly incapable of ruling in Gaza instead of Hamas. And the country in general has turned more to the right in the last decade. And I don't think there is a majority of support for a two-state solution. And especially after what the country has gone through on October 7th and afterwards, in the Palestinian Authority supported the actions of Hamas.
Has Hamas or the PA commented publicly on the end of the ceasefire?
They are, of course, Israel blames Hamas for the end of the ceasefire, for rocket fire being directed towards Israel early in the morning, and for no list being provided of potential hostages to be released this evening. And Hamas blames Israel for starting to bomb the southern areas of Gaza, specifically in Khan Yunis, early this morning. Hundreds wounded. That's been their response.
Israel really needs to take more care to harm fewer civilians. Israel really needs to take more care to harm fewer civilians if the war goes forward. Is there any resentment in Israel about America dictating how Israel should defend herself?
I think that Israelis in general and the political leadership are support for Israel from the beginning and continuing to express support, while many European leaders and, of course,